All right. So, what is cache locking and why do we actually need the locking system in our system? Now, let's assume that your system is running on multiple computers at a time. For an instance, you have created a POS system or an inventory management system. And then what is happening, like your PC, your website, or your application software is deployed or is being used at 5 different tables at a time. And then at 5 different tables or 5 different computers, there might be a chances like there could be occurred a race condition. Now what race condition is, basically it means like two queries at the same time execute in the database, and that could also result in database inefficiency and the duplicate values as well. For an instance, let's say I have created a column of sale underscore id, and I am generating the sale underscore id, the last id, and then I'm incrementing it by 1 in the column. So if two conditions happen at the same time, what will happen is like both might get the same values, or if not, the one will get the value, the second might throw an error like this value already exists, the sale id already exists, and the user or the front end person who is using your software doesn't even know like what this thing is. So that's why we need to use the locking system. So in cache locking system, what happens is like when you create a lock for a number of seconds, then that lock is executed, and any other transaction that you perform will not be performed until unless for 10 seconds. All right. And then you have to release the lock if your condition is executed successfully. If you do not release the lock, then no database query will be executed for the next 10 seconds before you leave the lock. Let's see what do I mean by that. So by using the cache facade, I am going to create a lock, and the lock name I will say, let's say post underscore create, and then the second parameter it accepts is basically the seconds. So let's say I use this for 10 seconds, and let's store this in a variable of, let's say, lock. And in order to check or acquire the lock, we need to check if the lock is actually set. All right. If the lock is set, then we need to create a post in the table. For an instance, let's say post create, and I am going to use the title, which should be like post 1, and the price column should be, let's say, 100. Now if I go to this cache page, and if I reload it, and let's see inside the browser. So now we have our value stored in here. Now take a look at this created at timestamp. So this timestamp is 31:12 seconds. Now if I reload the page again, the new data is inserted with more gap. So let's say I insert the record again, and after 10 seconds it should create the record. Now you can see no record is being inserted. The reason is that because we have not released the lock yet. For instance, if I now refresh the page one more time, and then I am actually able to push the value into the database. Now the problem will be if two sales generates at the same time, and then you try to lock the condition. What will happen is basically the first will be executed, and if you do not release the lock, the second may never be executed. All right. And then that can only be executed after maybe a 10 seconds or a certain amount of seconds you have given to your application. Now in order to release the lock right after the transaction has been performed, what you need to do is basically you need to use the lock release method, like so. And now if I reload the page, I see the data, and if I reload again, I should see the data again. There we go. Now the last one was 41 seconds, and then this is at 44 seconds. Now if I open the two browsers side by side, Let me open this in incognito mode. Let's open two side by side. Now if I hit enter here and reload the page here same time, what will happen if I refresh? You see both the entries have been executed, but at the same time, alright, 4 and 3, 4 and 3. But what happens is basically once the lock is released, only then the second entry is performed. If the lock is taking, or if your database query is taking some certain amount of time, then it will not be released until unless this query is executed. And now there is another method of releasing the lock automatically is by using the cache lock and then use the get method. Now this get method uses a callback function similar to this one, and inside here if I paste this command, now the lock will automatically be released. We do not need to release the lock like this. Now if I reload the page, let me maximize it. If I reload the page, now the entry is executed, and if I reload 1, 2 and 3 times, the 3 entries should be executed. So right now you can see we have 3 entries executed here. Let's say for instance we have total number of 15 entries, and let me just comment our first thing here, this line of code, and we have a total of 15 entries. Now if I hit 1, 2 and 3 times, you will see we have a total number of 18 entries now. Now the lock is being automatically released. So I hope you got the point of why the lock is actually really important when it comes to the large scale applications. And this concludes our section of cache, where we have learned how we can store cache, destroy cache, add values to the cache, and we have also learned how to store the values in the database of the cache, and then finally we have talked about the locking system in the cache. That's about it, and I will see you in the next section.